I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Starting a business on your own can be lonely and worrying. Selling online multiplies this issue tenfold. Getting expert help is a great way to reduce anxiety, wasted time, and confusion. The Amazing FBA mentoring program is in its 4th year of helping sellers to get started on Amazon. By now, we have former clients who have, starting from scratch, done 6 figures and even in one case 7 figures a year. Obviously, these are not typical results. These are exceptional people. Nevertheless, we can help you get launched faster, safer, and with a much higher chance overall of success. With clients from Melbourne, Australia to Manchester, England, we bring a genuinely international perspective. To find out more, go to amazingfba.com/mentoring. Thanks for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Amazing FBA podcast. This is the place to be for Amazon sellers based in the UK, but also a lot of people in America listening. And we have an American guest today, Robyn Johnson of Best from the Nest and Marketplace Blueprint. Bestfromthenest.com is for resellers and private label sellers to basically help people sell more products online, which we all need to do. And Marketplace Blueprint is for brand owners and agency owners. So Robyn brings a real spread of knowledge across different business models, particularly sourcing models, which is one reason we've got Robyn in. So Robyn, warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming on and getting to share a little bit about where we've been and where we're going and some of the things that we've learned along the way.
Excellent. So I know that you've got quite an unusual background for an FBA seller. Lots of people come from different walks of life, but tell us a bit about your background and how you got into, how you came to be where you are today.
Some people have this amazing story, like I was hustling lemonade and Girl Scout cookies when I was 2. And, I was always destined for this. I was probably the least capitalistic person in the world. Like I could not even get my mom to buy the chocolate bars from the school fundraiser. But in fact, right before the last job that I had before starting my own business was a youth minister, which is about the least capitalistic thing that you can do is to be a youth pastor. And I loved it. But when you work for the church, they say the benefits are out of this world because the pay is not. And I had a son and he was getting sick. And there was a point where they were testing him for all sorts of diseases. And they this test is going to be $3,000. And I want to say my first thought was, of course, let's do it. But my thought really was, how do I keep my kid alive and not lose the house? So we were just so far past our breaking point. I thought maybe we're always just going to be terrified. Maybe every time that the car thumps or the air conditioning whirls, I'm going to have to crawl in bed and cry because there's nothing else that we can do about it. And we were doing the Dave Ramsey plan. We decided to take an extra $100 out of our emergency fund and start buying and selling things, first from garage sales to Craigslist, then Craigslist to eBay, and then we started doing Amazon. And within just a few short years, we had built that $100 into $1 million business. We've grown a lot since then. We've evolved a lot since then. And we've got to work with all sorts of different kinds of sellers and all sorts of different kinds of velocities.
Oh, that makes a really nice change. I love the fact that you weren't trying to sell lemonade as a kid. I mean, you're probably unique in that way, and everybody else at least claims that. Yeah. I have to say, I'm the same, by the way. I'm not particularly capitalist. My parents are not really business-like. I mean, my dad was a lawyer, so he worked with business people a lot, but he was definitely not entrepreneurial. My mum was a teacher, and they're like the least entrepreneurial people you can think of. So it's quite good to know.
My dad's an attorney, and my mom is a teacher too.
Oh, well, I sympathize. How funny is that? Yeah. Well, so yeah, they're not going to be people that teach you about risk. I mean, lawyers are the people you bring in to de-risk the deal, and teachers tell you should, work hard and get a job. So, we managed to make it despite that background, and that's So I guess it sounds like your motivation was helping your family and being able to actually pay the bills, not for getting a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something, which is, again, a refreshing change. Not everyone's that interested in that, to be honest, I think. I mean, most people I speak to, it's about family often, actually. So obviously, you did an extraordinary thing in turning a tiny budget into a lot of money. So today we're going to talk about business models. Actually, you mentioned Craigslist, eBay, and Amazon, and obviously those are different marketplaces. And people often seem to get obsessed with the marketplace that you sell in as the business model. But actually, I know that how you source is really critical. So tell me about the different sourcing and business models that you've used and that you advise people on these days. Could you give us an overview really quickly of what those are?
So when it comes to Amazon right now, there's about 4 really kind of mainstay ways that people are going to have, they're going to find inventory if they're not creating a brand, if they're not part of a brand already. So if you didn't go on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den and you have a product, then these are the 4 ways that most people are sourcing their inventory for Amazon. And of course, there's variations, but the first one is used books. Now, a lot of people will look down their nose as used booksellers, like, oh, that's the beginner step. I know quite a few used booksellers that are making more than people who are doing private label and RA, doing multi-millions. The margins are great. It is dirty, physical work. Books are filthy, but it is a great way to get started. In fact, if you are looking to get started on Amazon, whether you have $1 million or 50,000 or $100 to start, I would say start with used books. Weirder the better, nonfiction. Stay away from expensive textbooks because there's counterfeit issues. Books can be a great place to learn the platform, and you don't have to worry about, is this liquid? Does it need to be double sealed? Does it need to have a poly bag? Is it hazmat? You eliminate a lot of that learning curve, and it just helps you identify, is this a platform that I feel like I can be successful at? And let me get a couple of quick wins so that as I go to invest more money, I have the confidence to know, okay, I know this money is going to come back to me. It's not that I'm just pouring money into abyss and just hoping that it all works out. The next step for a lot of people is once they've got, maybe we tell them to send 2 to 3 shipments of books, maybe get a couple $100 in sales. Then you can either continue with books, and then a lot of people will then move from RA to OA. If you think, I can't do books, I'm just not going to do it for whatever reason, whether it's your location or physical ability, then RA, retail arbitrage, and online arbitrage are the best ways to go. Now, if you're brand new to the community, arbitrage basically just means I'm going to go to some retail location and I'm going to find something at a price that's low enough that I can sell it on Amazon where maybe the demand is higher for a lot more money. RA and OA, people who do best at that are treasure hunters, people who don't mind either physical or being able to go in and systematically kind of look at things for OA. OA can be a really great place to kind of build up your experience, get practice in different categories. There can be some IP issues and can be some scalability issues. Now, it doesn't mean it's not possible. I know some amazing sellers that are multi-millions that do pretty much primarily RA, or, we have a couple of people in Canada who are doing OA really successfully. So it is very much possible, but it's going to take something. And as you scale RA, once you pass that $250,000 mark, the one thing I want you to think about is what got me here is not going to get me there. So what do I need to change in the way that I'm sourcing, in the way that my systems, my business operate in order to really be able to create the infrastructure to be able to scale past that $250,000 to maybe 2 or 3 million. And then wholesale is the other kind of, way that people move into the next stage of selling. Wholesale, where I see a lot of people getting stuck, is it's very delayed gratification. So wholesale is kind of like the world's longest bag of microwave popcorn. You see all this energy going in, it's spinning and nothing's happening. And there's no way for you to really verify whether or not those kernels are actually getting ready to pop. Because with wholesale, you have to put a lot of leads in. You're contacting a lot of companies. You're getting price lists. And so, people make it sound like, oh, get into wholesale today and you'll make $1 million tomorrow. That's not how it works. Anybody who's telling you that you can start wholesale and you're going to be able to see a return on your time and investment in less than 60 to 90 days, they're trying to sell you something and it's not a business. It takes time because it's going to take, 3 to 6 weeks for you to get your first inventory into Amazon. And then it's going to take time for it to sell, time for the disbursement. Just the math isn't there to turn your money around in 60 days. But people who do really well in wholesale are people who are really analytical, people who are good at spreadsheets, and people who are really good at, like, you give me a system that works, I will work it until I make the money. If that is you, somebody who's steady and consistent, maybe who is not doesn't want to do the shopping, wants to be able to have maybe location freedom, but also doesn't want to have the big kind of roulette risk of private label, then wholesale can be a really great option. Wholesale, people will say you can't get good margins. It's just like RA and just like private label. The longer you source, the better the margins you can get. I get 60+% margins on all of my wholesale, have for years. It's not a problem, but I go through stacks and stacks of data. I stacked up all of the magazines from trade shows that went to one time, and it was over 7 feet tall. So I go through a lot of data. That's how come I'm successful. I have family from China. My stepmom is from Shenzhen, and my uncle is from Shanghai. They obviously married into my dad and my aunt. But people will say, well, you have family from China. Why don't you private label? Private label is it's a lot more risk. And I've always had more opportunity here in the United States. And even if I was in the UK, there would be more opportunity there. Then I would need to take on the extra liability. So if you're a private label, you're taking on the liability of if somebody gets hurt, if you accidentally infringe on somebody's trademark or patent, but that doesn't mean they're not great business models. We know people who make really good money on private label. The thing is, you have to make sure you're doing it right, and you need to bring some value to the marketplace. What is your product going to bring that's going to bring something that's different for everybody else? So if wholesale is blackjack, then I would say private label is roulette. You're kind of putting everything all on one number. And if you win, sometimes you win big, sometimes you just get your money back, and sometimes you completely get wiped out. So you need to be thinking about what is your risk tolerance level and how much cash you have. So you don't have any cash, books, then a little bit more cash, maybe RA wholesale. Or RAOA. Wholesale, you're going to need anywhere between $500 to $3,000 in capital. Wholesale, unless you kind of find something that's really inexpensive. In general, plan on spending anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 on your private label from the time that it takes you with courses and importing and freight and advertising, all of those pieces. So I know I talked for a really long time. Sorry about that.
No, that's perfectly fine. Trust me, I'm very good at interrupting people. Whenever I listen to my interviews, I just think, Mike, talk less. But I mean, you're saying great stuff, so I'm just letting you go. I mean, 4 mainstream ways then, just to summarize quickly to help people absorb what we're saying. Use books, RA or OA, and just to clarify, retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, what we're talking about there. Wholesale, those are the main sort of 3 ways that we've mentioned, and then, of course, private label. So private label, we've talked about a great deal on this podcast. And I think you're right. I mean, that's one thing that it repeatedly strikes me that this one reason why I'm very, very interested in digging into other sourcing alternatives, not because when it works, private label isn't a good model. When it works, it's great. But as you said, there is always the risk, which is considerable, that you will buy something and you spend a lot of money on it and it takes months of your time. And then, of course, it doesn't, just sell as you'd expected, or it may not sell at the price you expected. So there's a lot more risk, even though you get, the upsides of owning the product and all the rest of it. So interesting that you're saying about the reality check on the wholesale side as well, because you do hear people say that you can get started within, a month or something. Tell me a little bit more about the match between, before we get into any individual model, let's zoom back out and let's try and figure out, you've already hinted about some of the sort of budget side of it, which is one reason to do a model or another. You've always sort of hinted about the sort of person that does the different things. Tell us a little bit more about how you would match up the entrepreneur and the sourcing model a bit more in a structured way. How would you pair the two? If you're sort of dating agency for entrepreneur on the one hand and business model on the other hand, how would you pair the two up?
So somebody who is like, I get an idea and then I jump off the cliff and then I'm just going to figure it out and I'm going to work really, really hard. I don't mind working really hard, but I just want to have the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And there's maybe a little bit like, those people do really well in RA and OA. I would say OA people are probably, introverts tend to do really well with OA. For RA to really scale up, at some point you're going to have to start talking to managers. And so you will have to talk to people eventually. It might not be till you get to 1 million or 2 million, but in order to scale up within your local geographical area, that's what's going to be required. OA people tend to be very analytical. They are very data centric. So if somebody had a lot of experience going through data before, they really like data. There's somebody that, likes to look up facts and things along those lines. They aren't going to do well in OA. Wholesale people who do really well, there are some people who are they will push through as many numbers as need to be pushed through. And those people can do well in wholesale. People who do really well at trade shows are people who are extroverted. Maybe they don't mind talking to somebody. They just don't want to sell something. So they're fine talking to people to buy, but they may be, because one thing we didn't talk about is brand management, where people are talking more, and it's what we're primarily doing, to be honest. But I wouldn't recommend that to anybody who hasn't had at least maybe $500,000 to $250,000 in sales on Amazon. There's just too much to learn too fast, and there's too much that you can mess up. But I would say, if you are somebody who is good at talking to people or good at hiring and managing and creating systems, Wholesale can be really great. Private label people are people with super high risk tolerances. So they're okay. They usually come from, you can't really go into private label unless you had some money to begin with. So you usually are going to have somebody that was a high income earner, somebody who doesn't have the time maybe to do wholesale or RA. And so they're trying to find something where they can shortcut the time. The thing is that private label is a little deceiving because you spend a lot less time sourcing compared to the other models, but you spend a lot of time fulfillment and launch and staying up to date in strategy. So it can be a little deceptive. But again, that's not saying that private label is not good. You just need to know what you're getting into.
I agree entirely. I love that. None of this stuff is right or wrong, as you say, but you need to know what you're getting into. And I think the time when there's real tears on the floor, and that's not very well put, but is when there's crying at night and a gnashing of teeth, is when there's a mismatch between what people expect a model to deliver and what they do deliver. And I really like the reality check. I'm like, it's probably going to be easier for me to sell stuff generally, and sell people into ideas or courses, whatever, if I'm a bit more kind of unicorns and rainbows. But the fact is, this stuff all takes time and all has downsides. And I like the fact that you're saying that, it ain't going to happen in a week or two with Wholesale. And the same is true for private label. My experience, I think it really does take 6 to 9 months to get a private label product off the ground, or the best part of a year if you're working alongside a busy day job and family life, as a lot of people are. And as you say, I really think it is for the risk tolerant. And most people are, it turns out, less risk tolerant than they thought they were, which is fine as long as you know yourself. So how does one even begin to assess that kind of thing? I mean, you've put it very well from the outside perspective. I guess you have a good sort of objective idea of this stuff, having seen a lot of people go through this stuff. If people are trying to assess it for themselves, how do people sort of try and figure that out for themselves? Is it even possible?
So the worst thing that you can do is to try to do all of them at the same time. I would rather have you do nothing than try them all at the same time. You want to pick one bread and butter thing. If you want to do, 2 months where I'm going to sample a little bit, that's fine, but you got to give yourself a hard stop, and then you focus on one method. And then if you already are selling, it's easy to say, oh, that shiny object over there, that's what everybody's talking about. I want to go over there. Your business is kind of like a wonky little child, right? So you have to make sure you feed that child. So first things first, we always have to look at what's working in your business. We want to pour gasoline on that, create automation and systems that allows you the free time to go play with the dessert item of this new shiny object. So save that towards the end and say, I can't work on this new fun strategy or technique until I've gotten all my metrics. I've met all of my KPIs for my business that's already producing results. And it's okay to experiment with those things as long as you keep the main thing. But when you're looking to identify which is the right one for you, we first look at cash flow, because it doesn't matter what you're going to do ultimately. If you have $100 to start, I'm sorry, you can't do private label or wholesale. I know people will tell you you can. And yes, you might be able to buy like a case of time at grocery, but it is going to take you forever to get started. So I'm going to really recommend that if you have under $200, you start with some used books, you snowball that, and then maybe do a little bit of OA or RA just for a small period of time. You can always move. You're not getting married to any of these sourcing methods. We've done pretty much all of them. We haven't done the private label just because we haven't felt the need, but we've worked with pretty much all of these. And what I'll tell you is that the reason OA would be kind of the next step, so let's say you have anywhere from $200 to $1,000 to get started, is because you're able to buy one or two at a time. You're able to restock quickly. So you don't need to have the cash flow. With wholesale, yes, you can buy a case at a time, but with RA, you might buy a week's supply at a time, and every week you're restocking. With wholesale, you're buying 4 to 6 weeks worth of inventory at a time, right? So you're going to have a wider cash flow net in order to keep that moving. Private label, generally 90 to 120 days restock period. So that means if I needed this much cash to stay in stock for RA and OA, and I needed this much cash for wholesale, I need this much cash in order to stay in stock with my private label. And by the way, if you do all the work, launch your product perfectly, and then you run out of stock, you've just destroyed all the money that you've invested in advertising trying to get to rank. So I would rather have you snowball, learn. And, honestly, I think before you do private label and maybe even wholesale, having that experience of selling things on the platform, understanding really like, okay, when I see that Keepa chart, I really do understand what it means. And I can predict with some level of certainty how that product is going to behave in the marketplace. So those are kind of what I would recommend. And not to get distracted by... There's so many people that kind of make it sound like it's get rich quick and it's easy. Anybody who tells you that it's easy, that it's get rich quick, they're lying to you. It is not. If you talk to the people who are making multi-million dollars on Amazon, they will all laugh when you say Amazon's such a passive income business. Now, do I have a lifestyle I never would have had? Do I have freedom? Can I wear pajamas all day? And, last week we went to the zoo just in the middle of the day because we could. Yes. But there also are a lot of long nights, and especially that first 2 to 3 years, it's working 7 times harder than you ever have before.
Yes, I agree with all of that. And this is definitely true. And the thing is, in the end, I think what strikes me that people that enjoy private labeling and are successful at it, particularly, but I think some of those come from a very big wholesale background or wholesale type relationships. But they really enjoy the game. I think if you don't want to work hard, you're going to struggle in life, probably. I'm not really a life coach, so I can't say that. But, I don't know any significant achievements in business, which is my, area now, or music for that matter, before that, without some serious grit. But also you got to enjoy the work. I think that's the key. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to get to the money anyway. So thank you for the reality check. So, okay. So we've got some kind of match between the budget and the personality type and the models. So the other thing you were saying is, just a very good reality check. Don't get shiny object syndrome. We all get that, including me. The trouble with me is I talk to very exciting, interesting people like yourself who know a lot, and I get shiny object syndrome from doing that. And so podcasts can be very guilty of that. So I guess what I'm saying to the podcast audience is don't listen to too many podcasts and follow the advice immediately. But having said that, you've got to have sometimes you get the opposite, don't you? You get stuck in one way of doing things and you need to break out of that. I certainly think that a lot of private labelers or people who are trying to make the private label model work should consider other ways of doing things.
We actually get a lot of people who come to us for coaching because their private label took off. They're doing great. They're winning private label, but their cash flow isn't able to support additional private label products. So they're looking for training to get into wholesale and RA to supplement because they've reached the maximum that they could grow it with private label without taking on a large debt service.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about that, because that's an interesting situation. I think that could apply to quite a few of the listeners.
So let's say I have, let's say everything goes as planned and I have my private label sheep shearer, left-handed scissors, whatever it was, right? So I have my widget and I've invested all of this time and energy in getting my widget to launch. It launches and Kim Kardashian tweets about how they're the best sheep shearer left-handed scissors that she's ever had, and they're amazing. I can't keep them off the shelf. Next thing I know, LeBron James is posting the dream. I am living the dream. Well, now instead of being able to restock my scissors 100 at a time and having that last for 3 months, now I need to restock at maybe 10,000 at a time. So what I thought was going to be a $3,000 restock is now a $70,000 restock. And if I have a couple of those, then yes, I'm making lots of money. But when I buy that 3-month period, especially when things are rapidly growing, I might not have enough cash to support all my business operations and this expanding inventory buy. And since once I'm buying 3 months, maybe 4 months at a time, I'm not going to get that money right away like I would if I go and spend $1 million on RA and I get it all in. I'm going to start seeing a lot of that sell all right away. It's going to be over a longer period of time with private label. So, even when everything goes right now, somebody's saying, well, I did that and I financed it. And at certain levels of growth, you can 100% just roll it. It also depends on how much you're taking for a draw. If you were a high income earner and you left your job and you're now taking $12,000 a month or 12,000 pounds a month for the listeners over there, then you're going to need a lot more margin than maybe somebody who says, I don't need to take any money out of my business. I have money that I can float on. Maybe I had severance or I'm still working my day job. So there's a lot of variables that can kind of change the way that you're able to grow. And so I would really kind of look at, we recommend that people have a 13-week rolling cash flow, and you always look at the best and the worst case scenario. If this flops, what will I do? If it is wildly successful, what will I do? And one thing, if you already have a business, look at your business and say, if that thing that I was like, oh, if I could just have this, that would change everything. Would that win destroy your business? Because I see just as many businesses start to collapse under too much success than as I do from not having enough success. So if you don't build up the kind of the structure in your business to be able to support massive growth, then when it does happen, if and when it does happen, then you're not going to be prepared for it.
Yeah, that's kind of sobering fact that as the harness of scaling up, which is all about the pains of scaling from one thing to another. And as you said, what you put it slightly differently, what got you here won't get you there. But also, growth sucks cash. Therefore, very, very fast growth is going to demand enormous amounts of cash. So I guess that's what brings us then to the adding the wholesale model on. So tell us a bit about how you might add a wholesale component to a as yet purely private label business.
So we have them go through the process just like we would if they were coming from RA or they were starting directly into wholesale. So we recommend that people start with trade shows. When you do the reverse search and kind of like starting in a niche, and you can 100% do it, you're going to end up with a lot of private label companies, which in the beginning can be kind of discouraging. And then a lot of times when people kind of started a product on Amazon and work back, they start with not narrow enough products or not niche enough products. So if I'm looking for products with high margins, I'm staying away from maybe anything that's in a brick and mortar, like a big brick and mortar retailer. So I'm looking at things that are in small brick and mortar, or so like kind of boutique kind of shops, but nothing that's in large big box. Because anything that's in large big box, you're never going to get the discount that Walmart or Target or whatever stores that you're shopping at are going to be able to get. So there's always going to be people who are going to be buying at RA on clearance that are going to be able to beat you. If you look at every product has a product lifecycle curve, and it kind of looks like this. And most people look at wholesale where it's like right up here at the top where there's already existing demand. Well, that means lower margins. If you get it too early, right in the beginning of a product, there's not enough demand. There's not enough people searching for it. So it doesn't matter how great your Amazon listing is. If nobody's searching for it, you're not going to get sales. This piece right here is really where we like to focus. And that's in areas where people are having large growth. So it's an upcoming trend. What we can do with those companies then is as we start to get to the point where maybe they are starting to get close to being ranked the top 5% in their category, we can say, you're going to get really attractive to a lot of folks here in the next 6 months. So let's get your policy set up. Let's set up some systems so that you don't end up with a bunch of unauthorized sellers. That controls the supply and demand, which extends out that top of their curve so they're able to keep that product viable for longer. You can look at a company like Pillow Pets that had massive distribution through the ads seen on TV and through brick and mortar. And then because of that, they actually had to completely redo their entire product line because the price erosion had been so bad. There was absolutely no saving it.
The famous example of that one, I guess, is in the computer industry, where I think Apple really severely limited the reselling of its products for a very, very long time. I guess they're slightly broader now, but yeah, as you say, the problem with popularity is price erosion, and I suppose there's a lot to take in there, by the way, what you're just saying. I mean, I suppose you're talking about you have your curves of the early adopters when it's really small, and then when it's sort of mainstream and early adopters, there's not enough demand. Mainstream, you don't get enough margin. So you're really specifically going after that place where it's just beginning to take off. So that makes a lot of sense in terms of sort of economic theory. How do you go about finding that wonderful sweet spot in practice?
There's a lot of like little kind of like left turns you can make, but oversimplified. We go to trade shows, we get as many price lists as we can, or we call and email people that are going to be at trade show and we say, hey, we saw that you're going to be at Sweets and Snacks. We wanted to see about getting some information before the show so we can make a decision of whether or not we're going to buy. Basically, we're going to go through all of those companies and we're going to find out ones that I can't sell on Amazon, are selling at or above the MSRP, that are within 15% of the category generally. Sometimes, that will vary, but, much wider net than most people are used to. And we also, if it's new to market, we're going to look at existing search volume for the brand. And so we're going to go through all that, get as many price lists, identify first which ones are profitable. And then when we look at profitable, we're going to see, can we buy these in the quantity that's appropriate that they'll sell about 30 a month. So I don't mind if something only sells 3 a month, if I can buy it in 3, 6, 9, right? But if I have to buy 70, that doesn't work. Because I want to be able to, and I actually recommend people make smaller buys. I know some people are like, get a truckload, get a discount. You don't know exactly how things are going to sell through until you have the product and you're actually selling it. So sometimes I'll buy a case, 2 cases, 3 cases, just to see how something's going to sell through before I place a larger order. Basically, we're gathering data, we're filtering data, and then we're going to go back. And once we have people that we think are viable, we're going to go back and say, I want to make sure I can sell this on Amazon. And if they say no, here's, the value add that I can offer. I can optimize your listings. I can help you with kind of product selection. So what are something that you can do that provides extra value to them? And you're going to get the yes. And on the ones you get no, we're not going to throw those away. We're going to put those in our project management tool, and we're going to follow back up with them in 60 to 90 days. And we're going to keep doing that until they tell us to go away or they give us the account.
Wow. I'm just trying to make notes here, and I'm just there's a lot going on with this. So obviously we'll have to think specifically about the wholesale model in a second. I think it'd be nice to break that down a bit. There's a lot to absorb. But so just to summarize my understanding of this, just in case it helps the listeners, you go into trade shows, you want to get something at or about MSR. So is that the more manufacturer's recommended selling price or something like that? MRSP?
So because remember we talked about that product and product supply curve, right? Yeah. So if the product is, let's say the MSRP, the manufacturer says this is a $20 product, and on Amazon it's a $14 product, that means there's already more supply than there is demand. And so the price is when the price starts to soften, that's how you can tell that it's starting to hit the end of that curve. So one, it tells us supply and demand. 2, it tells us and depending on, this is not true for all categories, but for many categories, the price, the retail price and the wholesale prices are really closely related. So if the retail is $19.99, the wholesale will be $9.98. And so if it's already below that, there's not enough math for it to be profitable, at least with my margin standards, if it's already below that. So that for those are the reasons why we cut it out. It's a supply and demand and a margin issue.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot that goes on to this stuff. So, and then you were talking about buying smaller orders to start with, which makes sense. As a general principle, I'm always encouraging people to do this as much as you can in whatever way you can within whatever sourcing model you're using. And obviously in the wholesale model, I guess it's a bit easier to do than with private label, where the minimum order quantities are normally pretty high. But so you're getting a small order, you place an order for a couple of cases, gather data, filter data, go for bigger orders. And then tell me a little bit more. Can you just recap a little bit about what you were saying about the bigger orders to make sure we've captured this? Because obviously the conversation with a brand owner is a crucial part of the wholesale model, which I guess doesn't apply so much in the other models we've discussed.
So the process would be, so let's pretend that I talked to Joe and I said, so he says, okay, you can sell my product on Amazon, but I'm only going to let you sell these 2 SKUs because these other ones I'm selling to Costco and I want to make sure that those go well. And I said, great, no problem. And so I place an order for 3 cases each of SKU D, E, and F. So SKU D, E, and F, I order 3 cases. I see that the first week I've sold 7 of each. So it's predictable that if I want 4, or let's say I sold 10 of each that first week, then it's predictable that would continue unless something else happens. So I need to place my next order for them right away. I'm going to place an order for 40 because 10 times 4 is 40. I'm going to round up to the nearest case. So, that might, depending on the cases, that might be 42. It might be something, depending on how it's put together, right? So I'm going to round up to the next case. And then I'm going, once I get that in stock, then I'm going to maybe optimize the listing. I'm going to do something work to kind of get that moving. Now, in the beginning, the first couple wholesale accounts, you want straight wholesale accounts. You don't want to try to get fancy. You can experiment with those things, but don't bank on that. Don't promise something you don't know how to do unless you have support and coaching of somebody who's experienced to do it. And then, but for us now, we've got a lot of experience. So we specifically look for products that have bad rank, that have bad listings, because those owners, they're looking to try to figure out what's wrong because they know their product should be selling on Amazon and it's not, or it's not getting good reviews. And we're able to move things, really fast. And because everybody else would consider it trash because the rank wasn't great. By the time we get the rank well enough where the people are starting to get interested in that product, we've already helped them, the manufacturer, lock down the distribution, so we don't have a lot of people that we're competing against. So, so a lot of people are like, I just going to get as much volume as I can. You need to think about how much volume do you really want and how much volume can your cash flow and your logistics really support. So for us to keep it manageable, we focus on high margin items and we sell fewer of each of those items, but we still make just as much as people who are grossing a lot more than us because we're keeping our margins really high.
Yeah, and there's a huge amounts to be said for high margins. I mean, amongst which is that you need less working capital. And I know we're going to talk about cash flow and financials in our next episode together, which I'm really happy to be addressing because it's so important. And I think we can't get enough education about this. Really, most of us, myself included, certainly need to get more and more and more educated about this. But also, it protects you against a slight downturn in the price. If you've got a 10% profit margin and the price goes down even a few percent, then you've cut that to the bone. It's basically not there. So I'm really with you on the high profit margin. I was having that very conversation only today with a client of mine who's got private label products, and they're just, low price point, low margin. And I'm just really encouraging them to go the opposite way. So listen, there's a ton to take in here. I'm kind of inclined to start wrapping that up, but have you got any other sort of instant pointers about wholesale? Obviously, we're only able to give people a flavor about this. I presume, since you're obviously so knowledgeable about this, that you've got a training or something that you help people with this stuff. I mean, is that something you can help people with? Yeah.
So we have an academy, and in the academy, I have a wholesale course. It is not flashy. We don't do great marketing. We just have really good content, and people refer people to us. So it's $50 a month. And so it's a lot cheaper than the other ones that are out there. It's 40 modules, and you also get a Facebook group where we'll answer questions. My Facebook notifications do get a little crazy. So if I ever don't respond to you, ping me again, keep pinging me. I'll either tell you to go away and I don't want to talk to you, which is pretty rare, or I'll answer your questions, but know that, I very rarely am ignoring somebody. It's usually that I just got busy or my dog threw up on the carpet right as I saw that notification, whatever it was, right? So, but with that wholesale course, we have, so we go through, how do you find the leads? How do you contact the leads? How we talk about, how do you restock? And then if you are in RA and you're or wholesale or private label, the skill you really need to learn is you need to learn listing optimization. So the academy is $50. That's charged. So that's Best from the Nest /academy. So bestfromthenest.com/academy. If you just want to learn a little bit about listings, I have a free Facebook group, and that's at marketplaceblueprint.com/Facebook, and it's a listing support group. So people will say, like, as I'm updating a listing, I ran into this problem. I'll post videos to understand about how to do that. So those are both free things. You're welcome to be, regardless of what country you're in, you're welcome to be in both. We've had people do the academy that have been from all over the world, and I'm happy to help with additional questions. The one thing I can't help you with is I can't help you with importing and exporting, because I just don't have enough experience to feel like it would be able to serve you well. And the other thing is, I don't really know a lot about, like, how do you set up the account in the US, like what bank account. So I would really focus on people who are in your community, in the UK community or the Canada community. There's a lot of people who give advice and you can tell they don't really know what they're doing and they give bad advice. So I would rather own that I don't know what I'm doing than give bad advice. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's very wise idea. And to the truth be told, that with importing and exporting, you should be using experts anyway, freight forwarder or whatever, trying to do DIY importing.
Not Yahoo's on the
I've had
internet.
clients of mine do it. It's a terrible idea. So you shouldn't be doing that anyway. And yeah, setting up a bank account in the USA, whatever, international banking. To be honest, there's so many services these days that deal with that. I don't think that's actually a big deal. But as you say, that's something for an accountant to deal with potentially. Okay, so great. So we got bestfromthenest.com/academy. $50 a month, as you say, it's a great deal cheaper than a lot of the things out there. And then listing optimization. Remind us what that was. Marketplaceblueprint.com. What was the /? Facebook, great. Okay, so you can do go and add to your Facebook woes while your dog makes a mess on the carpet. I like that. But anyway, listen, Robyn, thank you. That's a whirlwind of different possibilities there. So obviously, at $50 a month, I think it's well worth plunging in to just have a look at that one of those models for a few months, because it's not going to break the bank compared to a lot of courses out there. And as you say, avoiding shiny object syndrome. Thank you for the reminder of that, just to stick to one thing for at least 2 or 3 months and give it some kind of go to even begin to get a flavor of whether it could work for you. And I like the other thing that you said, really great reality check about how much money you have and also your personality. So thank you very, very much for a lot of common sense and some very, exciting sort of tasters of some possible menus we could taste. I'm not going to push this menu any further, but thank you very much for sharing that wisdom.
It's my pleasure. And, if you're looking at buying a course, one more thing is, the amount of time you spend working and sourcing in the first 2 years, you should be spending 75 to 90% of your time sourcing. And the leftover piece, like maybe 2 to 3%, should be focused on taking courses and stuff. It's all about action. So if, you think that, where people get stuck is they take, they out of their 20-hour work week, they're spending 10 hours looking at courses. Don't watch me that much. Work. And while you're working, listen to this in the background or something along those lines. But I really appreciate you giving me the chance to share. It's lots of fun. We work with clients that are million plus in all sourcing models. So one is not greater than the other. They're all just different, and they all have pros and cons that you just need to be realistic about.
Great, thank you. And I like the fact that you pointed out that it's not just a question of RAs for beginners and PLs for, private labels for grown-ups, or whatever way we might look at it, because as you say, people making lots of money in all the models. I also know people losing money in all models as well. So it comes down to having a good match between the entrepreneur and the model, and then working the model in the right way. So brilliant stuff. Thank you so much. And we'll be talking in our next episode about cash flow and financials. So if you're in any way serious about building a business in a capital intensive business like this, stay tuned.